actively take control. Did you know that success is an act of faith? It really is. When you believe in certain things, you take action. You don't wait around for a random chance to deliver results. You don't wait for things to feel right. You don't stick around for everything to fall in place. They almost never do. Last time I checked, most people don't plan on getting lucky. They have to have some sort of plan. For this plan to come to life and to actively change their lives, they have to take action on these plans. The key here is to believe in your goals and take control. This means commitment. You take control because you just don't want to act once and hope for the best. Instead, when you commit, you take control because this means you keep taking action day after day, week after week. You take action regardless of what you're feeling, regardless of whether things seem right, regardless of what other people are doing or saying. None of that other stuff matters. Instead, you commit. You take action. Ultimately, this takes faith. Real active faith takes action again and again and again. This is the kind of belief that you need because otherwise, it's not going to pan out. There are many challenges out there. It's easy to get hit with one setback after another. As I've mentioned earlier, if you cannot get through the front door, try the side. If that doesn't work, try the roof. If that's blocked, go to the back. If that's walled off, try the basement. If it's not happening today, try tomorrow, next week, the week after that. If you can't do this alone, get the help of others. When you take action, celebrate the fact that you are taking action. One commonly overlooked fact about successful people is that most of them celebrate the fact that they're taking action. They actually take a step back and they realize what they are doing at that point in time. They allow themselves to become fully aware that they are taking action, and this is leading to a particular goal. You have to do the same, because when you do this, you realize that you're not hoping, wishing, and fantasizing. In other words, you're not doing the usual stuff that you do, which robs you of victory. I can't even begin to tell you how many people spend their days fantasizing about the kind of lives they would be living. They're hoping and wishing that somehow, some way, the best things in life will happen to them. But they don't have a plan. They don't put in the work. Still, a lot of people end up wasting a tremendous amount of time daydreaming. They know whatever they are fantasizing about won't pan out. Forget about it. Still, they keep on daydreaming. They keep on hoping and wishing for things to be better. Why do it? Well, people daydream because they get an emotional release. Regardless of how frustrating their current situation may be, when they imagine themselves at some point in the future, a future where they are free of their current problems, they get a nice emotional rush. It's very easy to get addicted to this emotional rush. Sadly, the more people daydream, the worse they make things for themselves. They aren't taking the real action they need to improve their lives. The good news? You can shift your attention to the action you are taking in certain areas of your life. When you take a step back and realize that you are taking action, you remind yourself that you're not just waiting for things to fall into place. Instead, you celebrate your ability to actively shape your reality and establish your destiny. The more you practice your ability to take action, the more effective you become. I know at first it seems kind of weird. You're basically saying to yourself that you're taking some sort of mental snapshot of what you're doing at a particular point in time. It's off, it's unusual, it's abnormal, it's awkward. Regardless, the more you become aware that you're practicing your ability to take action, you get to start a chain reaction. You become more proactive. You get used to working towards your goals. Significantly, you learn how to fail faster, which leads to faster learning. All this activity then increases the chances that you encounter new opportunities, which lead, of course, to the possibility of greater success. All these things are bound up together, and all it takes is the commitment to take action. Success is an act of faith. Decide after enough deliberation and stick to it. You cannot be wishy-washy and become truly successful. That's just not going to happen. Why? Well, opportunities flash into existence all the time, but they disappear just as quickly. You can't waste a tremendous amount of time analyzing what could be, what could possibly happen, and other contingencies. You have to study your options, figure out what's at stake, but you have to decide. You have to make a decision. The toxic effect of analysis paralysis. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're looking for more data to decide on a problem or an opportunity? You think that if you get enough information, your decision will be the right one. What you're doing is you're just giving yourself an excuse to hold off on making a call. There will never be a point where knowing everything will make all the risks disappear. Forget it. That's just not going to happen. You have to decide. Now. Similarly, you will not stumble upon that magic bullet piece of data that will clarify everything for you. There's no data that will make sure your next move will be a slam dunk. It would be great if such information existed, but there isn't. The key here is to not freak yourself out when deciding. Set a deadline, but make sure that it's not too close so that you end up intimidating yourself. On the other extreme, make sure that it's not too distant, because if you hold off on deciding by setting up a date too far in the future, you're probably going to be as unprepared when that day comes as you are now. You end up attending to all sorts of things. Pick the right date. Decision means action. When you decide, you're not just going through some sort of mental exercise. When you decide, you commit to taking action. That's the bottom line. You haven't really decided if you do not take action or take on risk. You know you've decided when you are ready to make a move and face the consequences. It also means that you're prepared to say no to things that throw you off or distract you from your new goal. In other words, making a decision means making a commitment. This is not an easy thing. When you commit, you prepare for setbacks. You know that things can and do fall apart, so you're going to go into this situation prepared for all sorts of contingencies. At the very least, you're going to come in prepared to improvise, innovate, or negotiate. Regardless of what you do, please understand that deciding or making a decision doesn't mean expecting things to be smooth sailing. That's not commitment. Making a decision also means knowing when to stop. While deciding means you're going to be taking action and you're committing to the long haul, it also means that you are committing to know when to stop. There has to be a limit to your actions if things are not panning out. This prevents you from sticking to an impossible situation that robs you of opportunity costs. Opportunity costs are real. You can't continue to do something that has an eventual payoff of $2 when you could have stopped and chose to do something else that pays $100. Understand that when you decide, this includes committing to knowing when to stop. Key points to remember. When you commit, please understand that your commitment speaks volumes about your character. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of person do you imagine yourself to be? Understand that this image that you would like for yourself is in danger if you do not know how to commit. If you keep changing your mind or if you quit too easily, you're never going to establish this character that you would like for yourself. It's personal. People might think you're great. They might compliment you. But deep down inside, you know that you suck because you can't commit. You know there's something wrong with you because you can't go all the way. Make it personal. There has to be some sort of personal sting from within to make you stick to what you committed to. Believe that you don't know everything about your goals and must learn more. Even if you've done extensive research about your goal, please understand that you cannot know everything. There will always be a blind spot. There will always be room for improvement. Most people are able to handle this, but the problem is the older you get, the more you assume. It's very easy to think that you know everything about your goals, so you assume that you've got it figured out. You admit that you don't fully see the whole picture, but you assume that if you see enough of the pieces of the puzzle that you'll be okay. This is a problem because assumptions short-circuit and undermine learning. You're not looking at your problem set with a fully open mind. Instead, you think that if you see certain patterns, you will just use solutions that you did in the past because this is familiar enough to you. You can't do that. Assume a growth mindset. When you assume a growth mindset, you know that you begin from the initial proposition that you don't know everything. You may have done this at some level before, but you haven't done this exact project before. When you assume that there are limitations to your knowledge, you are more likely to grow. You're more likely to ask for help. You're more likely to access resources to give you the information you need to make progress. How does this work? When you operate with a growth mindset, you first focus on your core competency. We're not jacks of all trades. We all have certain core competencies. Find yours. Once you've identified these, work outward from it. Here's how I do it. I look at my goal and I break it down based on my core competency. I list down the things that I know like the back of my hand, and then everything else. These are called non-core elements. What do you do with these? You can delegate, outsource, postpone, ignore, or forget them. It all depends on how important they are, what their effects are on your ultimate goal, and how pressing they are. Regardless if they fall outside of your core competency, do not hesitate to delegate, outsource, postpone, ignore, or forget. By doing so, you increase your mastery over your project. You focus on what's important and you leave less important stuff to the hands of experienced specialists, people you work with, people you respect, or you just postpone, ignore, or forget. This leads you to become a more effective goal manager. Believe and act like there is always a way through any problem. People are overcome by problems not because they are dumb or unlucky. This is not a simple matter of IQ. Most of the time, they're just not prepared. They did not have a system coming in. It comes as no surprise that when the unexpected happens or a setback appears, they have a tough time. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to know exactly what will happen in the future. This doesn't mean that you have to look at your goal and anticipate each and every potential setback in minute detail. You don't have to do that. You don't have to go that far. Instead, you just need to employ the following system. Identify. The first thing that you need to do when you come across a problem or setback is to identify the opportunity in that situation. Oftentimes, opportunities come disguised as challenges. So ask yourself, where's the opportunity in this situation? What can I learn from this situation? How can this situation make me better? Use the fact that there's an opportunity there, regardless of how small, as motivation or inspiration to come up with a solution. If anything, it's a learning experience. It's yet another opportunity to solve a problem and come out on top instead of letting it defeat you or frustrate you. Optimize. Now that you have come up with a solution, try it out again and again. See if you can make it more efficient. Figure out ways to get faster results. Look into making it more comprehensive. Run test after test. Come up with the very best solution you can come up with for your particular situation. Dominate. Once you've optimized your solution, master the problem. Not just right here, right now, but into the future. Do you see your solution applying to different types of challenges? Do you see it leading to more solutions in the future? Whatever the case may be, crush the problem. Don't just feel relief that you dodged the bullet this time. You have to stare the challenge right in the eyes and dominate. This is not just a simple matter of coming up with a hack or a quick solution. No, you're looking to dominate the problem. Scale up. Now that you've dominated the problem by using an optimized solution, use it extensively. Try to use it as often as possible or come up with a bigger version of this solution. For example, if you've always had a tough time meeting deadlines, you can optimize the solution that helps you meet deadlines. You then dominate the situation by setting up a system where your on-time delivery always produces the very best quality. You can then apply this solution to other areas of your life, like your relationship. This means that you're never late for a date, or you never forget anniversaries or other important events. Know when to cut your losses. While learning how to identify, optimize, dominate, and scale are important, there are certain problems that are just insurmountable. If that's your situation, know when to cut your losses. You hit a wall, and it's impossible, at least at this point in time, so cut your losses and backtrack. Successful people relish calculated risks. One of the most interesting finance shows I watch features interviews with financial managers. These people manage multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, mutual funds, and other financial instruments. One particular fund manager blew my mind. The interviewer asked him, "What do you do to avoid risk?" The fund manager said, "I don't run away from risk. Instead, I run to the risk that meets the reward that I'm looking for." This floored the interviewer. "You actually assume risk?" Well, it was kind of an ironic moment because I assumed that if this financial advice show host really knew his stuff, he would not have been surprised at all. One of the long-standing rules of the finance world is no risk means no reward. Put in another way, if you are looking for a high reward, you have to take on a lot of risk. Risk is always part of the package. Successful people know this. Accordingly, they take calculated risks because they know that the greater the risk, the greater the reward. Unfortunately, people trying to copy successful people oftentimes get it wrong. They end up gambling. They end up taking shots in the dark, hoping to get lucky. There's a big difference between risk-taking and gambling. Risk-taking only happens when you're properly educated about what you stand to gain and what you stand to lose, and the probability of that loss. When gambling, you're just focusing on odds, and that's all you pay attention to. When you take calculated risks, you look at what's currently happening, what could possibly happen, and make strategic decisions. The good news is that the more educated you are about the move that you are about to make, the lower your risk. You can't entirely make it go away, but you can manage your risk. Successful people always find ways to assume more risk while managing it. They actively seek risk. They run to it. They don't run away from it. Eventually, they keep repeating this over and over to achieve impressive results, and they begin to control risk. They always have a plan B. Maybe this takes the form of insurance. Maybe they hedge their bets, buying different types of companies in different industries, or they buy different asset classes. For example, you could be buying risky stocks, but offsetting it by buying government bonds or investing in local real estate. In the same portfolio, if they're buying stocks, they would buy blue chip, stable stocks, and balance it out with more aggressive tech stocks. Regardless, successful people relish calculated risks. Risks do not stop them in their tracks. Instead, they seek calculated risks. Best practices when adopting a success mindset. Congratulations, you've reached the end of this training. Please note that as empowering as the information shared in this training may seem to you, it's not going to change your life or lead you to success if you don't take action. You can't just treat it like mental candy. That's not going to work. You have to carry it out. You have to implement them. You have to tweak them. You have to customize them to your set of circumstances. In other words, you have to take action. Once you've carried these out, here are some best practices that will help boost your results. Mindsets are like muscles. When you adopt these mindsets, please understand that you have to test them. You have to use them and challenge them. In other words, they're like muscles. Remember the first time you went to the gym and tried on some weights at the bench press? It probably was not a pretty sight. It probably wasn't that positive of an experience. But the more you did it, the more you got used to it. You're able to lift heavier and heavier weights. What you're doing is you're challenging your muscles. Plus, you're also getting them used to repetitive patterns. The same applies to mindsets. It's not enough for you to use these mindsets once or even twice. You have to use them over and over. They have to become part of you. Also, you have to grow them by challenging them. Use them in different situations. Scale up the challenge. Whatever the case, you have to apply pressure on them for them to get stronger and for them to produce better results. There is no better time than now to start. Don't trick yourself into thinking that there is always tomorrow. You have to start now. You don't have to do much, but you have to take action now. Stop waiting for tomorrow. Stop waiting for things to be just right for things to feel right. You're just giving yourself excuses when you do that. Instead, you have to commit. Every setback is an opportunity to learn. Make no mistake, you're going to run into problems adopting the success mindsets I've described in this training. For whatever reason, there will be an obstacle or two. Instead of crumpling like a paper bag the next time you are challenged or experience a setback, look at them as opportunities. Don't get all emotionally worked up. Instead, focus on the sense that you've seen this before. Focus on the sense that this is not all that unexpected. Because when you're in that emotional state or frame of mind, you're more likely to look at the setback as an opportunity to learn. What could you have done differently? What could your attitude have been? How can you anticipate this issue and prevent it from happening again? Regardless, be ready to learn. One of the best attitudes you can assume when trying to adopt these mindsets is to assume the attitude of a student. When you're a student, mistakes are not the end of the world. They're definitely not a source of humiliation or embarrassment. Instead, you often chuckle or laugh, and then you figure it out, then you try again and again, and things get smoother. If you have a system, you will not fail. Finally, you should get a system going. I've already discussed one possible way to deal with setbacks, which is to identify, optimize, dominate, and scale. Come up with your own variation. Come up with something that better fits your particular set of circumstances. Whatever the case may be, come up with a system that is truly yours. Please note that the information that I shared with you here are just starting points. That's all they are. They just lay out a basic foundation. But it's up to you to tweak, adapt, and configure them so they produce the best results in your life. That is your responsibility. That's how you take control over this whole process.